Hi, Suzanne.
Hi,
Hi.
how's it going?
Uh,
Mhm.
Things are going fine. It's quite hot in Mumbai, so
Yes,
struggling
it's
with struggling with the heat.
humid, humid also.
Yeah, yeah.
Humidity, yeah. It's getting pretty hot here, and it's
Global
almost
warming.
always humid. So, at least though you're fairly right there by the ocean, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's
I think,
nice.
but I think this time it is much more than
Oh yeah.
in the
Well,
previous summers, and I think that that might have something to do. I mean, it does have something to do with what we are doing with the forests,
oh
global
yeah. We're
warming,
gonna we're
pollution.
slowly roasting ourselves. Yes.
Yeah,
We know
and it's interesting because one and now it's not just theoretical at that point. I mean, one can
that. Right.
actually
Absolutely.
see it, sense it. So
Yes.
yeah, that's quite sobering on its own.
Oh, totally. And that's where I'm just like, you'd have to be unbelievably willfully blind
Yeah,
to
yeah,
deny
yeah.
those
Or
things,
your materialistic or capitalistic interests.
which
Uh,
are insane.
yeah, that should outweigh everything else for this to make sense.
Right.
You know,
Because where are you going to spend your money when there is no
Mars,
more,
Mars, I
world or
guess.
humanity or ecosystem, right?
Right, right, right.
That's a topic for another day.
Yeah. So what is our topic for today?
Well, I thought we would do, you know, a little discussion. It doesn't need not be long.
Hmm.
So you had sent me something, and um, the question it raised for me was just something I've thought about here and there, and talked about here and there with students or friends, whatever. And it's this idea. So, and you can tell me how prevalent it is, for example, in India as a cultural norm.
Okay.
It's certainly a cultural norm in the United States.
Hmm.
And that is, and it's captured quite well in the very common saying, we do not speak ill of the dead. And so the thing you had sent just had, at least one person making that kind of comment, obviously at length. Um, and, you know, so I guess I was just wanting to talk about that in general and then hear from you about it as far as the culture there. But just the very notion that when a person has died, we do not speak ill of them, and all that may or may not entail. So I thought that would be kind of a good little discussion to have because it is certainly common here, and you can tell me about your experience there.
Mm. So the question that immediately raises for me is, would that apply to every person? And as soon as we say that, philosophically, one has to ask, would it be inappropriate or wrong to speak ill about someone who was a bad person, let's say,
Right.
in that particular cultural context? So that's the question that raises. Um, so then, are we speaking about uh, about the proprieties that govern our conduct in society? So if we are speaking in that context, in terms of like basic decency and so on, then are we saying that we should wait for like a week or
Right.
a
Right.
month
Or
and
what? Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
That's just what's okay. So I'll give you some context for why that has been just this question that's in my own head. Like I said, I've spoke with a few people about it. Certainly haven't written about it or anything like that. Um, but it is very common in this culture in America.
Mhm.
Um, and again, I don't mean something like you don't speak ill of the dead at their funeral. I mean, there's just this idea that once a person is dead, that it is somehow wrong for anyone to speak about them in a way that would be construed as negative.
Mm.
And
Uh, just to,
so,
sorry for, I think one thought that just struck me, and I interjected because otherwise I'd forget. Um, does that have to do in any way with the idea that once a person is dead, they are from, let's say, because we're talking about America, from a Christian context, once they are dead, now their judgment has been transferred to another authority. I mean, they're going to be judged over there, and we basically don't have to do it first, and then
mhm,
secondly, um, we are usurping um, basically God's function to judge right now because the person is dead.
right.
So does that enter into this equation, into this
Yeah, that's a legitimate hypothesis, if you will. And
Mhm,
it's not like I've ever asked anyone this question and they gave me the answer. That's never happened. It's more like we just talk about it.
mhm,
Um, and I don't claim to know, and nor am I saying that I've researched it. It's just something I've observed as long as I can remember, and it's certainly a phrase I've heard again and again. And so, for example, when it came up for me most powerfully was on the occasion of the death of a family member. And, you know, human beings,
mhm,
even those of us that, we might somehow think of ourselves as at least striving to be virtuous and good, uh, um, actively, uh,
mhm,
likely, knowingly or unknowingly, at some point in time, have hurt someone, right? And and so, on the occasion of this family member's death, being the person I am, very much just straightforward. I don't really kind of feel like there should be taboos on discussions as long as it's done in good faith and it's sincere. Um, I brought it up,
mhm,
brought up something this person was known to have done by many people, and it wasn't just a one-off. It's not like they did this something one time on a Friday. It was a systematic pattern of behavior that was harmful.
mhm,
And from my perspective, um, part of sort of um, assimilating, if you will, the reality of the death and the impact of the life of that person upon their children and extended family members necessitated an open acknowledgement of what had happened. And I was actually really surprised. I mean, I'd heard that phrase about don't speak ill of the dead my whole life, but I was surprised that I got pushback from certain family members that I would have thought
mhm.
would, because they're more intellectual, would have been more open to the discussion. And, no one gave me like an explanation like you proposed that maybe for some it's a religious thing. And I could totally, recognize or understand that, right? I may not embrace it myself, but it would make sense, or what
The
have you.
the
So,
the religious thing that would be like I think that would be the more cultural the underlying sort of cultural reason. That may not
mhm,
be the conscious reason why
right,
people tend to hold to this not a taboo, but this restriction about
right,
this boundary about speaking ill of the dead. I think the general explanation that is consciously given is that even if that person has done um, wrong things, you should have courtesy towards the family. That's what I've heard. That the person is not going to hear this, so there's no
right.
point in you expressing this because the person is gone. The ones who are here, though, his or her loved ones, one should, in deference to them, one should, hold back. This seems to be the sort of the conscious reason that people give, although the unconscious or the underlying cultural reason might be religious, or I mean that I just an hypothesis, just a thought. But yeah,
Right.
so even you're saying even um, members of the family who are well read and intelligent, intellectual, even they had this
Yeah.
yeah.
It was surprising. And on the one hand, I can totally say, for example, it's somebody says, well, I think it's all in God's hands now and we, should let it go. Okay, I can understand that to a point. Or they might say, again, just trying to come up with a possible objections and a response.
Hmm.
On the objector side, they might say something like, well, that person's not here to defend themselves.
Yeah.
Okay. But for me, um, while the person may be dead, the impacts of
Hmm.
their actions during their life continue. And to
Mm,
deny that to me is utterly irrational. And
mm,
so, you know, um, what I'm going to give you is a made up example, but sort of resonates with my own personal ones. And there's many. There's not just one. Okay, but let's just imagine there's a, a family, extended family, so there's brothers and sisters who have children, and they're kind of a close family that they do spend time together throughout the year, events, parties, holidays. Maybe they camp together, they go on vacations, who knows what, but they're an extended family that's relatively close.
mhm,
And then there's this member, and so often in my experience, it's not just one. There'll be multiple members of a family who, because it's a patterned learned behavior, engage in certain types of abuse. Now, it can range from anywhere of being dismissive and demeaning verbally to, physically violent to, indulging in alcohol and therefore, disrupting family gatherings. Especially in America, I don't know about in India, but I think this is so common that most everybody can nod in agreement and go, oh, yeah, that may not be their family, but they know this phenomenon, right?
yes.
And so imagine though, so this one like really bad family member has died, and there are other family members, maybe one, two, three, however many, who now that the person is dead, actually feel safe enough
Yes.
to tell what has happened to them,
Mm,
right? Whatever it may be, okay, from the more mundane,
mm,
this, but yet still hurtful, to something quite extreme, right? Sexual abuse, let's say. Um, so I mean, from my perspective, that's why I've always found the notion of don't speak ill of the dead to operate in a very oppressive way. And we can talk about the psychological things, and that's a discussion we may want to have now or not, about how there's this correlative phenomenon. And again, maybe this doesn't happen in India, and that's awesome. But in America, there is this correlative phenomenon that shows itself as a surviving family member then lionizing the dead person in such a way that other people are actually kind of taken aback, where it's like, wow, you are really spinning a narrative that turns this dead person into some great human being, when the reality is that the people closest to that person, not maybe not all, but enough, feel like that's not an accurate representation of that person at all.
mm,
And so I just see those as often occurring together in this culture. Um, and like I said, when, if say somebody wants to come forward and speak ill of the dead, not because they're just being hateful and cruel, right? That's not
right.
the kind of thing I'm talking about. I'm talking about they're actively seeking healing and maybe some empathy or compassion or whatever, right? Looking for someone with whom they can resonate. They get squashed, they get stamped down by this don't speak ill of the dead. To me, it's like this crazy but powerful form of denial, like psychological, the denial, minimization, and then active delusion. That's where I think the whole let's tell a story about how grandpa was the most wonderful American who ever lived, when the fact is he was an active alcoholic who beat his children, you
Mm.
know, and caused them harm. And even if they don't grow up to be abusers, trauma has to be worked through. I rarely feel like there's a human who experiences severe trauma and somehow magically they're just okay
And,
and good.
and often when a person dies, that's obviously that's the point when one doesn't one feels safe to open up about them. But also, it's after the death of a person often that one even recognizes what happened. And
Sure,
it's important to allow that space to be open enough that one can reckon with that, one can deal with that situation where it's after a life is over that one can look back on it in
right.
and take its proper measure and
Sure. Isn't
take
that Solon? Wasn't that Solon that actually said
did
that like
did
2,500 years ago,
oh okay
right? Yeah.
what did he say?
Just essentially what you said that and I think Aristotle picks it up, but
Mhm.
Solon, I believe, predates Aristotle, and Solon
Predator.
says
Yeah.
you cannot at all evaluate a person's
Yes.
life
Yes.
until they're dead.
Until they're dead. So it's only at the end that you can sort of take a measure of the entirety of your life. So
Exactly.
when one is uh, in that space, um, yeah, one might have to confront with really negative things about this person, and maybe even
Right.
positive things. Everyone is a mix of
Right. Right.
both, but it's not the positive which is off, which is suppressed, right? So that
Right.
we don't have to speak about the positive because that's allowed anyway. It's
Right.
only that is allowed. But yeah,
Right.
one has to come to terms um, with negative um, a negative imp a negative the negative impact that that life has had on oneself and on others that one knows. But
Right.
what is interesting is at that moment one also encounters that a legacy is being built around this person, and a memory is being created uh,
Right.
almost immediately, in fact. And
Right.
and often mourning rituals involve this.
Right.
Mourning um, involves, at one level, a genuine kind of mourning, an authentic mourning would be to come to terms with the negative and the positive that one experienced from
Right.
a beloved relative.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
an inauthentic sort of formalistic mourning would be, uh, you know, just shedding tears and then um, recreating or creating a certain memory of this person,
Right.
which may not
Exactly.
completely match with one's lived experience with that person.
Right.
So,
And the etymology of the word mourn, to
mm,
mourn, means to remember. The actual
mm,
etymology
that's a
involves remembering. And
wow.
and so what comes to mind, I mean, obviously I'm not in any way saying, at the funeral you get up and you say terrible or anything like that.
No,
Obviously
no.
there's
Mm,
civility, there's decorum, and I'm
right.
all about, whatever keeping people comfortable to an extent up to a point. But, you know, I feel like any book you pick up, whether it's like a straightforward, truly psychology book, or even more philosophical or even more self-help,
Mm-hmm.
certainly in a recovery communities of various types, whether it's like you're trying to get over, uh, dysfunctional behaviors or alcoholism, that there's definitely this reoccurring idea that we can't truly assimilate what has happened to us and grow and evolve unless we're willing to confront.
Mm,
reality, right? And that might involve the fact that your mom, your dad, your grandma, your aunt, your uncle, whoever, your cousin, your brother, your sister was not a wholly good person, and that they inflicted serious harm on yourself or someone else.
mm,
And to me, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're saying that person is damned or doomed. I don't even see that as part of the conversation. It's, that's whatever that is a separate kind of thing. Um, but you mentioned legacy. And when you said that, I realized, oh, okay, so that needs to be put on our list of the common, what I would take as common justifications for the don't speak ill of the dead. But
mm.
here's my response to that. Well, that legacy is only going to survive for a certain amount of time. And then everybody that ever knew that person is dead anyway. I
Okay.
mean, this is just how I see it. It's like, my grandma, she was born in 1911, and my daughter was a baby when my grandma died. And so my daughter only knows my grandma through, things I've said or other family members have said. But let's be realistic, at least in this culture. I don't believe there's very many people who make it a point of their being to keep alive legacies of long dead family members. Now, we might want to reverence our ancestors, and that's different,
Well, there
right?
is yes, that's an interesting point, but there is one other thing. One may so the so let me put it this way. So at one level, there might be there might be just the memory of a person. They made the best sandwich. They had the
Yeah,
best fashion sense and so on.
right.
These are just memories. But there might be often institutions attached to people. So, for example, um, a, a person, an ancestor, a person, someone before us, let's say, may have started or may have, started a business, let's say, and they lived a life which their personality was largely shaped by their being a business person. So what that
Hmm.
means is they were street smart, they knew how to talk to people, they were very diplomatic in how they addressed issues. And so these are some of the values that they embodied. Now the thing is that these values are institutional as well now in the family. Let's say that this business is still a
Right.
running business, and when I'm protecting the memory of my ancestor now, I'm also safeguarding this institution. So I'm not going to
Right.
be open about the fact that they cheated so many people in their lives,
Yeah.
or they fired um, uh, employees left and right for no real
Right.
good reason, did not give them any safety in the workplace, and so on. Now, the reason I may not want to bring those things up is because I have existing institution to preserve, and
Right.
somehow tarnishing the memory of that person might tarnish this institution
Oh,
for
of
some
course. Yeah.
yeah. So
Right.
there is a clear ulterior motive of forbidding you
Right.
from critiquing
Absolutely.
a person.
Right.
And this could work across institutions. Marriage is an institution. So
Yes.
let's say that one's grandpa was patriarchal, really
Hmm.
patriarchal, and critiquing that critiquing his patriarchal behavior, his homophobia, etc., etc.,
Right. Right.
might have contemporary implications to
Right.
to the maintenance of this institution right now, which is built on
Right.
patriarchy and heteronormativity, etc., etc.
Right.
So there might be these sort of ulterior kind of even political reasons why we you know
Right.
safeguard legacy
Right.
of people. So
Exactly.
and that
And
goes
I go see that what you've just articulated as being very intimately tied with what I was saying about, um, not just the creation of these
Right.
narratives of greatness or the oppression or suppression of dissent
Uh,
among family members,
right.
but also just the general
Mm,
preservation of the status quo. That's why I
mm,
said I see it as part and parcel of an oppressive
absolutely.
paradigm.
Absolutely.
And, and again, I'm not saying that we should, make some kind of party out of cruelty
No.
or anything. I'm talking about like straightforward, sincere
Mm.
discussions. And, honestly, I
Uh,
mean, this is just my view. This notion about preserving legacies because of someone's financial status or the status of their business, or, let's just take the Kennedys, right? The Kennedys, that's such a Camelot and all of that. Honestly, I could care less. And
yeah.
I care more about the actual well-being of humans. And, if we
Yeah.
have to up
No, no, no,
something,
no. That is true. But I mean, but from a completely diagnostic point of view,
right,
this is why it must be happening. Like this is
right,
why would someone invest so much energy and thought on something that has gone away, something that's a person
exactly,
who has died. There might be these sort of ulterior reasons. I mean,
right,
from a completely descriptive point of view. I mean, obviously,
right,
it needs to be critiqued because it often becomes the wall um, protecting a wall protecting this entity from any criticism, any fair
right.
evaluation, you know?
And it
So,
preserves the sort of structures
yes,
or environment, if you will, for the
yes,
perpetuation
yes,
of abuses, of oppression, of whatever we're talking about. Again, it could be kind of mundane and not
right,
so terrible.
right.
That only women wash laundry or something kind of silly, so everybody in the family, that's how it works. Or it could go to very serious and extreme things like, not paying people a living wage, sexually abusing children, any of that. And so I see all of this is actually relevant to all kinds of things in our world right now.
It's also quite relevant to the question of separating the art from the artist, even
Absolutely.
because for example, there's Woody Allen, the person, and then there's the movie Annie Hall. So
Mhm.
I mean, it's an awesome movie, but
Right.
but the guy
But
uh,
Woody's got problems.
Woody's got a
Yeah.
lot of problems. So how do
Yeah.
you what legacy now? In his case, there are two legacies now. One is the
Right.
sort of the personal legacy because Woody Allen is also a character. Like
Right.
he behaves in a certain way, he carries himself a certain way, he has a sort of comedic body language and so on. So there's him, and there's
Correct.
also a kind of a sort of uh, I don't know if if I'm being accurate here, but there's also a kind of nihilistic style to him,
Right.
you know. So there's
Right.
that legacy, and then there's the legacy of his work, and then the question would be uh, which to which to preserve, or if
Right. And I mean, I would argue or advocate for the view, and again, taking our ontological pluralism
mm,
and applying it to the individual. I mean, there's people that have only known me as their teacher, for example, and I'm thankful to say that
oh,
largely I am very much appreciated and people are kind to me and they respond to me. And I've had students for 26 years who love me, and
mm,
I love that. It's wonderful. But at the same time, I don't think that the person I'm partnered with, my, cohabiting, that person's experience of me is not the
mm,
same. So I am a plural being in and of myself. And, back to the family member with the bad things, by no means do I think that most people, if any, are utterly reducible to the singularity of their vice, if you will. The person I have in mind was very much loved by not so much their own children, but by people in the community. And that person was good in the sense they did do things for other people in the community. So do you see? So I don't know. I just
I
feel like
I
we,
also think I also think that that's an interesting point, because I also think that people, I mean, I think we don't appreciate how awesome it is that we are mixed bags. I mean, there's something
yeah,
awesome about this. I'll give you an
right.
example from uh, so for example, George Orwell was, I mean, an amazing novelist and writer, journalist, and everything. But he also had difficult opinions about, or actually in his case, quite negative opinions about homosexuality.
Mhm.
And there are feminist writers who think that one can one can notice misogyny and so on
Right,
in his writing, which is not to be exonerated.
right,
But at the same time, moral effort means that I'm not perfect. I don't have the best views, but I'm trying to figure them out. I mean, I'm not.
right,
If I'm a complete dick, that's a different thing. But if I'm someone who has certain difficulties with a proposition. So, for example, I think that the ontological pluralism that you're talking about, I have difficulty with that, because I really think that Jesus Christ is the only way, truth, and light, for example.
right,
Now,
right,
I'm not coming to that position from spite or from. I genuinely hold to that opinion or that position. Now, uh, my nobility, if you will, would be to not have a ready-made pluralism, but to figure out how to engage with others, how to engage in a plural world, while at the same time being honest to what I really think about
right,
certain things. So how do I? That requires effort. I mean,
right,
if I didn't have that first position to begin with, it would be much easier for me. But there is something interesting or something. One can actually know a lot about character when a person has these very firm convictions but is still trying to engage with others who have different positions,
right.
and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that therefore everybody should be fundamentalist about things. What I am saying is that if someone is convinced of something, or is not able to completely accept the politically correct position on something, but is still trying to figure out how to engage with that
right.
with all honesty and genuineness and goodness,
Hmm.
then there is something interesting and something noble in that, I think.
Yeah,
And
I do too.
and all debates and friendships and um, yeah, between the right and the left, or a conservative position and a leftist position, um, should have this kind of dynamic. Otherwise,
Right,
we'll be left with only one side of the aisle,
right,
which would mean there's no aisle. So one has to
right.
figure out how to.
And that sort of ideal that you've articulated can then be applied to the very thing we're discussing. Whereas that's why I just wanted to talk about that idea, because I feel like when someone holds that view, or a society, whatever, you don't speak ill of the dead, so therefore shut your mouth. To me, that's a fundamentalism, and it's
Yeah,
very dangerous,
yeah.
and it's very not humble in any way. And I
I have
the experience.
I have right. just to, I have a question which I want to raise to you on that point, which might, I think, sometimes could complicate uh, that position that we are expressing about criticizing um, legacies and the. I mean, do you think that there's a place and time for this? I mean, for example, Gandhi, who is the most important figure in Indian politics, in Indian history,
Hmm.
um, is currently being basically erased from public respectability because he was such a big advocate of religious harmony. And a government which does not want that, which wants religious fundamentalism, let's say, will have to
Hmm.
first decide what to do with Gandhi. So,
Right.
so it is important, therefore, it becomes important then in this political context to revive Gandhianism, let's say. But the
Right.
problem is Gandhi was not that good, right?
Right.
So
He was a
he,
flawed human being.
yes,
Yes.
but flawed also in ways which we would find difficulty, we will find really difficult to justify. For example, he
Mm.
mentions in his autobiography that he was celibate for most of his life, and
Hmm.
um, he used to test his celibacy by sleeping naked with his female disciples.
Hmm.
Now, he is a man who has extraordinary power and influence. So
Right.
it cannot but be coercive. Nobody can.
Hmm.
I mean, the power imbalance is simply too much. He is literally the image of India.
Right.
So, so if that is brought up too much, let's say,
Right. Hmm.
Gandhi's legacy it will become really difficult to maintain the Gandhian legacy, which is a political requirement now. But at the same time, we also have to be honest about who he was as a person. So we are left
Right.
now with a dilemma as to, yeah, sure, he was a bad person, but he's really necessary now in
Right.
Indian politics and the direction that Indian politics is taking. So
Right.
it, it becomes difficult to figure out when
Right.
uh,
Um, so here's what comes to mind just when you were saying that, because it is a sort of a difficult situation. And, so two parts to this. There's something, it seems to me, about human beings, and I do think it's probably primordial in a sense, that we understand things best
mm,
and prefer to learn, if you will, via not just merely stories, but via characters, via human beings or beings in a tale. And when we can see ideals and principles um, manifest and embodied via a person or a figure or a character, whether fictional or real, it's far more powerful. And I just think that's a given. We'd have to talk to anthropologists and other people to determine if I'm right in my intuition there. But I think there's something about us as humans. We like that. We prefer it. That's why stories are important. And therefore, Gandhi as a character is super important. And like you said, there's reasons that we would want to preserve at least certain aspects of his legacy because of like we said, the ideals and the principles that wound up with that are so crucial. At the same time, interestingly enough, in a lot of recovery literature,
mhm,
and here I'm talking about whether it's a AA type literature or Al-Anon, which is not for the people who drink, but the rest of the family, or any of that kind of stuff. what you'll hear again and again is this notion, and it's this great little sentence. There's a lot of cool slogans, but it's principles over personalities. That's it. And I've often found that to be like a very fruitful and helpful thing because, like, you and I both have encountered people want to just dismiss Heidegger out of hand
Mm.
because of his time as a National Socialist. And again, we've talked about this before. You cannot reduce an artist or a thinker to their biography. So, in a way, though, we can rationally acknowledge that what is really important about Gandhi is not that
Right.
person. I mean, it's important they existed because we're humans and we're living out a human unfolding history. But what was crucial about Gandhi was certain principles and ideals, right, that he held and fought for, if you will. And so this is again where I think that when we can sort of take ontological pluralism and apply it to a person, we can then better position ourselves to sort of tease out, what are those principles and traits and ideals and, beautiful beliefs that we esteem and find so valuable, and recognize that those can exist and do independently of the individuals who happen to embody them for us in our unfolding human drama. And so that's what comes to mind. And again, though, I just think we are so attached to stories and therefore narratives that have characters
Mm.
that it would almost seem that how could you ever believe in Gandhi's ideals at the same time you don't sort of preserve the legacy of Gandhi? But that's where I say, well, he's not the only one, right? Martin Luther King Jr. studied Gandhi, right? And studied his thoughts and his speeches or what have you, and all of these things, his methodologies, so that he, as a character, could, find tools or what have you to embody and
Right.
be a character that represented those ideals and beliefs, etc.
So what you're saying is that what we are valuing here is nonviolent resistance, not individual
Yeah,
moments in the life of a person, but rather
right.
rather the ideal that they stood for, which
Uh-huh.
does not entail those negative things. Like, for example,
Right.
being a Heideggerian, not once did I feel that uh, that this set of ideas in Heidegger entails Nazism. There's only one way
Right.
to read this. I mean, I think if we read Mein Kampf, that would be what we'll see. That
Right.
there's no other way to read this except as a Nazi,
Right.
obviously. But when we are looking at figures like Martin Luther King or um, Gandhi, we are really looking at the sort of the principles that they embodied. And what is interesting in what you're saying is that there's a need for an ontologically plural evaluation of people, um,
Mm-hmm.
an ontologically plural evaluation of dead people, people who have
Mm-hmm.
passed away, and an ontologically plural evaluation of their legacy.
Right.
Um, yeah.
I
So
think so. And if we can acknowledge and appreciate that we do as human beings, um, we just there's something about us. Again, is it primordial? Is it evolutionary? I don't know, but we do love. And I mean, storytelling has existed as far as we know
yeah.
since people could speak. And so, um, for millennia. And so, and there's crucially important for teaching values. And then, with the Greeks, you have the dramatization, right? So, people that come and watch the theater. And again, that's one thing that I liked when I learned this about Greek theater and the mask, where it's everybody has the same mask on and it's a plain white mask. And to me, that was so important because what it showed me clearly was that this isn't actually about the face of
Mm.
the character. What's important is the dialogue and the principles and the ideas that are being conveyed. And so it showed me like the way the transcendent, if you will, is what's more important than sort of this temporary instantiation that happens to have this face
Mhm.
or your face or Gandhi's face.
No,
And so there's this sort of timeless eternality
right.
to certain principles and ideals that we can all just wear the same white mask and it still comes through because it isn't even about the person.
Mm.
That I hope that made sense,
That made
right?
a lot of sense. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That made a lot of
And
sense.
so
Indeed.
and again, back to the original question about the dead, you know, uh, to me, it's just like I said, I feel like that idea, don't speak ill of the dead, is a tool of oppression. It's a tool of domination. And it actually harms. It's, yes, it does those other things we talked about. And I think it gets instrumentalized. But it's to me, it's all in the same toolkit of um, just the logic of domination, if you will, manifests as the nexus of
Yeah.
patriarchy, capitalism,
Uh,
and
uh,
patriarchal religion,
mm,
where we just are wanting to control.
mm,
So, because of our own interests, so whatever they may be, usually they're financial,
right.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Is there a
um,
in this is there a question about the distance of relation between you and the dead person? So, for example, if you're a distant relative, do you have less of a say in should you be
I
more
don't know that.
should you be
I mean,
more
I don't know.
Mhm.
Go ahead. What were you going to say about it?
So if you're a distant relative, do you have like more of uh, this responsibility to courtesy uh, because it should be the close relatives who should open up about the wrongs that this person has done in their time when they find it appropriate. You
Yeah.
being a distant relative, um, one it is possible that you were not impacted as much as they were impacted.
Uh-huh.
So you have more of an onus to courtesy
Mhm.
because you're allowing them the space to open up about this person when they think it is right.
Right.
Would that be?
That seems reasonable. I mean, obviously, I want to say that anyone who knew the person has a seat at the table, okay,
Mhm.
because they know the person and they may know them in different contexts. And like we've said, we're plural beings. Um, and I don't mean by that we're not authentic or consistent as a human being. Obviously, we know some people do put on masks, if you will, that they wear at work, and then a mask they wear at church, and then the mask comes off at the house, and all the people in the house are abused. I mean,
Mhm.
all that to say, I think there's a place at the table for anyone who knows the person. And sometimes a distant relative will have the same experience of the person as the close family members. And I mean, this is just a thing that's well documented, even within a household. Let's just say you have a really abusive parent figure.
Mhm.
There's three children. One of those children took the brunt of the abuse. One of those children was the favorite, and the other one kind of witnessed it all. So, by no means do I feel like our experiences of any person are going to be uniform or anything like that. But I guess I just feel like that we need to drop that ridiculous notion of not speaking ill of the dead. Obviously, we do it at the right time and, at the right place and such, and that we're open to realizing that even somebody we felt like we knew really well. I mean, and this is shown time and again, like with criminality, and then like the family doesn't know or whatever. Whatever we think we know about a person, there's more to that person than we know, and they may have had a terribly abusive interaction with a family member. Could have been a sibling, a child, a spouse, an elder abuse, right? Maybe that person was totally abusive to their own elderly parent, but great to everybody else. I
I
mean,
Yeah, no, I think the fact that we are plural beings actually supports your argument in the sense that because we are plural beings, um, it's possible that only one person knows that aspect. of the dead
That's right.
person. And this
Absolutely.
one person with whom that person was abusive or
Mhm.
cruel and so on, disrespectful, etc., the others are never going to open up because they never experienced that from this person. So
Right.
there's no sense in giving them that space to deal with it because they don't have anything to deal with it with respect to
Right.
this person. It's only
Right.
this one person who could be a distant relative, could be a closer relative. It's only this one person who has seen this aspect, this
Right.
face of this dead person, and then in that case, they have the foremost right to set the
Right.
record straight because after all the awesome things that everybody has said, there's also this one thing that I want to say
Right.
to complete the picture. So yeah,
Right.
the fact that we are plural beings actually supports your argument that therefore it is important now that I open up because in his plurality there was one side to him which he only showed to me, and
Right.
only I can inform you of this. And
Right.
so, yeah, so
And
yeah.
that, that is a common and well documented reality for different kinds of abusers who
Mhm.
may seem wonderful pillars of the community, even be philanthropic, and might do great things in the world, so to speak, but in the house,
Mhm.
right at home, it could be that the wife was the receiver of the abuse, or the children, or a particular child, or the wife and one child. I mean, it's so
And,
varied.
and sometimes the abuse can be so subtle that
Yes.
even as you explain it, people won't understand it. Especially
Right.
they won't especially understand it because they are hearing it or seeing it in the context of all this good stuff, right?
Right.
So the abuse is already subtle. It's not like clear. It is clear
Right.
to the victim, but it's the perpetrator is too crafty.
Right.
The abuse is so subtle, so psychologically
Right.
devious, let's say, that the one who's the people to whom you're going to like go and say this, they wouldn't even be able to recognize
Right.
what you're saying to be a form of abuse because
Right.
they have all this
Hmm.
other information about him. They have they have this other set of experiences from him, which kind
Right.
of outweigh what you're saying or
And
um,
by no means am I trying to argue that you have to spill the tea, so to speak, on your family members, to your family members. Not at all. I'm just saying that
mm,
maybe your best discussion is with a therapist, or at a group. Go to a group, or with a friend, or but just the general idea, um,
mm.
especially
So,
when
so, so, so you're saying that so let's say that we only speak, but you're not saying only. Are you saying that we should set the record straight or
in
uh,
some cases, yes. And
mm,
I think it's a case by case, and that's again Aristotelian sort of
mm,
context and character kind of thing. If I'm trying to you know, have a nice, meaningful discussion with some, say, cousins, and you know, a, a family member has passed, and I know that myself and at least this one other cousin, um,
mhm.
had experiences, not one, but several experiences with that person.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
makes
to
sense.
me, it's only natural. It's not even about making a choice. It's just natural to be truthful and honest. And that doesn't mean that I'm dismissing any of the good that person did in any way, shape, or form. But it's also sort of like, instead of having a two-dimensional portrait of a person,
Yeah.
it's better to have the actual three-dimensional sculpture of the person. So, let's be real, okay? That person wasn't always the best person, and they harmed people. And here's how they did it, and again, it could be what we think of as sort of mundane harm to more extreme.
Mm.
I don't know. I just feel like in general, I'm an advocate for truth, no matter what. I don't care who it harms. Malcolm X, his quote about "I'm for justice, no matter who it's for or against," and that's just how I am in general. And so I find that whole "don't speak ill of the dead" thing to be weird, and I don't like it. Like it's just an intuitive thing. I don't like it. And same thing with people saying blood is thicker than water. I don't like that either. That's a tool of oppression. It's to make family members fall in line.
Mm.
You have to be
And,
loyal.
and 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 made to feel guilty when they go against
Right. And,
blood.
my view is just because someone's related to you doesn't mean
No, no, no.
anything at all.
No.
It means nothing in and of itself, right? Now, it could obviously make for a chance to get to know them and love them and maybe,
Yeah,
give
yeah,
them
of course.
kidney, you know,
Mm.
but
No, no, no.
so these are all just weird little facets, I think, of this
Yeah, it's
paradigm.
really interesting, and I didn't. It's so fascinating that we spoke so much about this concept, which is it's such a small thing, but there's so much to it. It's not a small thing.
Right. Right. Yeah. And, again, there's a proper time and place, right?
Yeah.
And I think again, we can't dictate it. We can't lay it out. It's not like we can set up a code of rules or ethics on it, because again, it's going to have more this Aristotelian feel where it's all about timing and the character and the context and what is happening. But I just think when we embrace without thinking idioms, if you will, or rules, norms like
Yeah.
that it's a problem,
Yeah.
and that we should give more thought to it and really ask ourselves about why,
Hmm.
why we hold that view.
That does make
Because
sense. Yeah. Yeah.
people
And
love to wield those things like blunt instruments,
yeah. And I think that psychology, psychoanalysis has done quite a lot in making this a possibility because
Mhm.
in therapy you are encouraged to come to terms with your loved one. That is almost the whole
Right.
thing
The
that you're
the
doing.
point. Yeah.
Yes,
Hmm.
that and it's interesting that even the sort of the when I first read Freud's Oedipus complex, uh,
Hmm.
and the way I understood it, which might not be the right understanding, but at least one thing seemed to show itself in this is that Freud did Freud is saying that your relations with your loved ones, even the closest ones, these relations are not as obvious as you think. That's what I learned from that idea that there's much more to it than how it appears, and your job now is to figure that out, to
Right.
deal with it, to
Right.
to work it out. Um,
Right.
yeah, so in that sense, Freud has
Yeah.
also contributed to opening some of these because these are all even today taboo subjects. Uh,
Right.
Talking about your parents like that
I know. It's
to a stranger,
crazy.
you know.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think
It's
psych
crazy to me.
yeah, psychoanalysis has opened that space quite well, I think. Yeah, so
Right.
we owe
And
it also. Uh,
right. And sort of a last point on that would be I would want to say that I do, based on personal
mhm.
reflection, personal experience, what have you, I really do believe that we can't actually have genuine, authentic regard,
Mm.
appreciation, and value for a person, say a parent, unless and until we have confronted the full thing. And again, that's best done once they're dead. But
And I also think that we should want our friends to be like that, or
yes,
we don't want
absolutely.
someone who's always smiling at us and
No,
always,
God, no,
we want
no.
we want people who we don't want people who are like always critical just for the sake of criticism,
Right.
but we want
Right.
people who we can trust are going to tell us on the face if
Exactly.
we do something wrong,
Exactly.
you know.
Totally.
So
Totally. And so, I do think that, and I think it's an unfortunate truth that a great many human beings, at least in this culture in America, um, they are robotic in the views they hold about their parents and the memories they've chosen to keep alive, even narratives they have constructed that are not grounded in reality. And it's sad. I find it ultimately just
yeah,
sad. And whereas if, there was a willingness to honestly confront the good as well as the ill, the
yeah.
harm as well as the help, and then, sort of embrace it, work through it via whatever means, that person can emerge in a position to actually legitimately acknowledge the good of that person who otherwise hurt them in certain ways, right? I, I,
And
I
that
think this applies to all relations,
right.
right?
And that acknowledgement of the good is also to that extent more precious because
Right.
it's not robotic, like you said,
Mhm.
you know,
Right.
but it comes out of a genuine and hard to do evaluation.
Right.
And the goodness that we discover after that or through that is to that extent more valuable and more
Right.
honest, you know. So
And I
one,
would even go so far as to say that if you can do the work and get to the point of the authentic appreciation
hmm
as time passes,
hmm
my personal experience and from a few people I've discussed this with, it's as if the good takes ascendancy
mm,
and the bad, it's not denied, it's not lied about, but its impact has been minimized via the authentic confrontation with it. And I mean, and again,
yeah,
I'm
that's
only the age I am, but I suspect that if I get to live longer, that I will see that that is true more and more with the certain people, for example, that I've had to do that about. And so, and a couple of good close friends that I talk about these things with. So I
mm,
don't know, it seems a worthy endeavor and um, just overall positive for everyone. I
no,
mean,
that
everyone involved. And, I mean, it's a whole other discussion, but we could get off into what we think of as the redemption of ancestors.
mm,
Um, and the notion that you can still work through a relationship with someone even though they're dead.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? And
yeah.
restore a right relation
Mm,
with them,
mm.
right?
Which is also an essential component of your own self-development because a lot of what you are is inherited, not like physically, but also
Right.
memorially or
Right.
so it's really important to fix your or not to fix, but not that everything has to be fixed, but it's very important that you deal with or come to
Right.
terms with or reckon. I like the term reckon.
Hmm. That's a good word. Yeah.
Yes, reckon with your ancestors. And I think that the, the reason I think that this discussion is much larger than how it appears like on the face of it is because the ancestors that we are talking about are not only our immediate ancestors but also our cultural historical
Right.
sort of ancestors, you know.
Exactly.
And
Right. So this whole discussion could be taken and put over to say, USA
yeah,
confronting and reckoning with its history of
absolutely.
genocide and slavery. Right. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's
And
really all,
what is
yeah,
politics other than that? I mean,
right.
what are students doing on campuses, for example, other than
Right.
dealing with reckoning, figuring out what to do about their
Right.
history, you know? So
Exactly.
yeah. So though on the immediate level, uh, it is about our immediate ancestors. If we sort of expand the scope of this, we are talking about our entire culture, with which
Right.
also we have to. I mean, for example, an American has to deal with the fact that the founding fathers did not. I mean, founding fathers, they were slave owners. um,
Right.
did not write slavery out of the
Right.
Constitution. Um, what is
We
politics?
massacred
Yes,
all the native people. I mean,
yeah,
it's just all
absolutely,
there. And
absolutely. So
so, you know,
in India, there's obviously the legacy of caste and the
right,
caste system and so on. So I mean, politics is in a way, one way to think about the meaning of politics of political activism would be to come to terms with our ancestors
right.
and try to figure out what to do with.
And in that regard, we need to be able and willing to speak ill of the dead.
Yes, we need to.
It's, it's just we can speak the good as well, and we should. And I think that's how. I mean, I'm not necessarily into the notions of patriotism, nationalism. I'm all for bioregions, but as far as like appreciating, valuing our culture, cultural legacy, and what have you, how could we even claim that it's authentic when
Yeah,
we haven't confronted the
yeah.
truth?
Yeah.
So,
And it becomes easier to do that once we recognize that history is a tragedy, not a
yeah,
melodrama. Yeah,
yeah,
it's a you're not going to find good things there. So
right,
just know that before you enter into that minefield. So so that makes it much easier to be honest once you
right,
know that once you know what to expect from history
right,
of your culture.
right.
So yeah,
So
I think
great.
that was a good discussion on
Yeah, great.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
very nice.
I didn't know that one statement has so much in it. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, only this.
Oh, we just scraped the surface, like we noted at the end. We could just go deeper and deeper and wider and
Yeah,
wider. So,
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
well,
So,
thanks.
thank you. So until next time.
Yeah, like and
But
subscribe,
yes,
please.
yes. Bye.
See you soon.
Yes.